Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to a special current affairs episode in which we are going to discuss and analyze the recent visit of Maldivian President Mohammed Muizzu to India. This happens to be the first bilateral visit of President Mohammed Muizzu. I am sure all of you are aware of the recent tensions in India-Maldives relationship, which has been a direct result of the anti-India position that President Mohammed Muizzu had taken against India over the last 1 year. Now, this visit marks a complete reset in the relationship, and it also marks a diplomatic U-turn by the Maldivian president. So this happens to be a turning point in India-Maldives relationship and a very, very important development as far as the Indian Ocean region is concerned. So in this episode, let's understand the importance of this visit of the Maldivian president to India, because few key agreements have been signed. Let's also take a look at the brief background of India-Maldives relations, how India has always stood with Maldives and helped the island country. We'll also discuss the recent tensions that came up in the relationship because of the anti-India approach of President Mohammed Muizzu. We'll discuss the agreements that have been signed during the visit, understand its importance, and of course we are going to focus on the elephant in the room, the India-China competition in Maldives, and as well as the competition seen between India-China across the Indian Ocean region. This is what we are going to discuss and analyze in the next few minutes. So if you guys benefit from all these initiatives, do let us know with your comments, do give us more likes so that it motivates us to do better. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Now before we start, I have an important message for 2026 aspirants. The Liberty batch for 2026 aspirants is being launched from October 11th. So if you wish to enroll for this comprehensive online classroom program, you need to ensure that you join as quickly as possible, because the course is available at just $24,999. This will give you access to the live classes taught by our top English medium educators, and you'll also get to access prelims and mains test series along with the study material, and as well as mentorship and one-on-one doubt resolution sessions as well. So this would be a comprehensive program, and those interested, those who want to get in touch with us, you can register for a free counseling session to meet your educators by using the link provided in the description below. So share your details and we'll get in touch with you, so you get an opportunity to talk to the educators and then decide about enrolling for this course. So with this, let's get started with the discussion. President Mohammed Muizzu visited India over the last 2 days, and 5 important agreements have been signed between the two sides. This marks a breakthrough in the India-Maldives relationship. In fact, it is a result of the course correction that we have been witnessing in the relationship over the last 3 to 4 months. This is a very significant development for us, because over the past 1 year, President Mohammed Muizzu had created many challenges for India. He had openly taken an anti-India position and a pro-China position, creating complications for Indian interests in Maldives and in the Indian Ocean. So let's understand what are the key developments. Let's also look at the brief background and analyze the India-China competition. President Mohammed Muizzu has hit the reset button in the relationship. After creating tensions in the relationship with the anti-India approach, over the last few months, Maldives has hit the reset button, primarily driven by its economic crisis. So this course correction by Maldives towards India is primarily a result of economic necessity. Maldives is in a desperate economic situation where it needs India's help and support, which has pushed the country to change its approach towards India. So thus, President Mohammed Muizzu has marked a diplomatic U-turn in his policy towards India, which is good news for India, which is beneficial for Indian interests. So Mohammed Muizzu has reiterated that India will remain a friend of Maldives. See, earlier when we had very friendly Maldivian governments. For example, we had an authoritarian leader by the name Maumoon Abdul Gayoom, who was in power from 1970s to 2008. During his rule, Maldives was very close to India. We shared very close strategic relations. Then Maldivian Democratic Party, MDP, when it came to power in 2008 and when it came to power again in 2018, we enjoyed very good relations with the MDP, which had formed the government in Maldives. So under these governments, Maldives had adopted a India first policy. Maldives has traditionally given India the #1 priority in its foreign relations over any other country. This had cemented India's pivotal role in Maldives and in the Indian Ocean, thus protecting Indian interests, thus ensuring that Indian Ocean remains a traditional strategic backyard of India. But of late, there have been few governments in Maldives and few leaders in Maldives who have taken a position against India and inclined towards China. This is what creates challenges for India. But India has always kept its priority in the Indian Ocean to act as the first responder for any crisis situation, not just in Maldives but across the Indian Ocean. This is in line with India's goal of being seen as a net security provider for the Indian Ocean. India has been doing this for many decades. India provides economic support, military assistance to any Indian Ocean country, be it Sri Lanka, be it Maldives, Mauritius, Seychelles, even East African countries. If they face an economic crisis or a natural disaster or a security crisis, it is India which has always stepped up and acted as the first responder to a crisis situation, and thus India has cemented its position as the net security provider in the Indian Ocean. This is in line with the Sagar Doctrine launched by Prime Minister Modi in 2015. Sagar stands for security and growth for all in the region. Through this foreign policy doctrine, Indian government has promised security and growth, maritime security and economic growth for all the Indian Ocean countries. So this is what allows India to maintain its dominant position in the Indian Ocean and challenge the rising influence of external powers like China and the others. So let me give you a brief idea regarding how India has always been the first responder and the net security provider for Maldives. Even before the Sagar Doctrine was introduced, India has always been stepping up and helping out Maldives during its times of crisis. For example, in 1988, the then Maldivian government under Maumoon Gayoom faced a serious security challenge. A Tamil militant group known as PLOTE, based out of Sri Lanka, tried to carry out a coup to throw out Gayoom's government and assassinate the president in order to topple the government. This was a conspiracy hatched by few Maldivian politicians and business leaders who were against Gayoom in collaboration with a Tamil militant group from Sri Lanka. During this security crisis, it was India which responded. When Gayoom requested for military support to save his life and his government and his country, it was India which stepped in. The then Rajiv Gandhi government launched Operation Cactus. Immediately Indian troops were deployed, the para special forces from Indian Army, along with Indian Air Force and Indian Navy, and we successfully defused this coup attempt and neutralized the militants of PLOTE, thus protecting Maumoon Gayoom, his government and the stability of his country. In 2004, when Maldives was hit by the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami, even though India itself was severely hit, especially Andaman Nicobar, Tamil Nadu had taken a severe hit during the tsunami, we launched disaster management assistance through HADR operations. We provided humanitarian assistance and disaster relief through the Indian Navy to multiple countries affected by the Indian Ocean, and Maldives was one of the beneficiaries. We helped Sri Lanka, Thailand, Indonesia and even Maldives under Operation Cactus. This was specific to the country of Maldives. We carried out Operation Rainbow to help Sri Lanka during the tsunami, and parallelly Indian Navy had launched Operation Castor to help Maldives by providing HADR support as part of disaster management assistance. In 2014, Maldives went through a water crisis. As a small island country made up of an archipelago of states, it doesn't have sufficient drinking water sources. It depends heavily on water treatment plants, and one of the water treatment plants had suffered an accident, a fire accident, thus creating critical water shortage. So Indian Air Force and Indian Navy airlifted large quantities of drinking water, potable water, to help out the country by dispatching water aid. And Maldives, being a very small economy, it is heavily dependent on tourism, fisheries. Other than that, it doesn't have significant sources of revenue. As an island country, it has a very vulnerable economy, which is dependent just on two sectors, tourism and fisheries, with no other major source of revenue. So every now and then it faces a liquidity crisis. Its forex reserves will deplete if tourism takes a hit, if fisheries take a hit. And this causes a major economic crisis in the country. And every time India has stepped in and has provided financial support to the country. This is how India had cemented its position. From 1965 to 2008, especially from 1970s to 2008, under President Gayoom, India enjoyed very good relations with the country. We not only had close economic diplomatic relations, but even close defense and security relations. Then in 2008, Maldives transitioned into a democracy, and the MDP, Maldivian Democratic Party, won the elections under its leader Mohammed Nasheed, who continued the India First approach. Mohammed Nasheed and his party MDP believed in India First policy, and this continued until 2012. But that is when disaster hit the relationship. From 2011 onwards, we saw the rise of Chinese influence with the opening of the Chinese embassy in Malé, and few political leaders and parties were sponsored allegedly by China to promote India Out campaign. This led to the rise of anti-India sentiments. Can you see this leader over here in this image? Yamin Gayoom, a relative of Mamoon Gayoom, rose to power and toppled the elected government of Mohammed Nasheed in 2012. A conspiracy, a political conspiracy led by the opposition with support from the Maldivian police and defense forces led to the throwout of Mohammed Nasheed's government, which was a pro-India government, and overnight it was replaced by Yamin Gayoom's government, which was seen as a pro-China government. So from 2012 to 2018, for 6 years, India had to deal with a nightmare in Maldives. Several key projects which were being executed by Indian companies were cancelled by Yamin Gayoom's government. Strategic projects were taken away and they were handed over to Chinese companies. For example, India's GMR infrastructure was building the international airport at Malé. This airport project was given away to a Chinese firm. Yamin Gayoom even signed a free trade agreement with China and joined the Belt and Road Initiative, which goes against Indian interests. And Yamin Gayoom built a close defense partnership with China, allowing Chinese military vessels to dock in Maldives. Maldives even leased an entire island. The Fedu Finolu island was leased to China, and China is building military grade infrastructure, including a port facility and a runway, which could potentially turn into a Chinese military base in the coming days. So this is how India lost its influence under Yamin Gayoom, and he was actively seen promoting anti-India sentiments through the India Out campaign. Because previously, when we had close defense relations, India had gifted defense equipment to the country in order to secure its exclusive economic zone and enable Maldives to conduct maritime surveillance and reconnaissance. India had gifted the ALH Dhruv helicopters and the Dornier maritime reconnaissance aircraft. To maintain and operate these military equipment from India, a few Indian troops were also deployed in the country. We had even gifted few naval patrol vessels to the Maldivian Defense Forces and the Coast Guard. But Yamin Gayoom started the India Out campaign. But fortunately for India, there was a change in government in 2018. In 2018, the pro-India MDP won the elections and came back to power under Ibrahim Soleh. Ibrahim Soleh was seen again as a pro-India leader. He restored the India First policy of Maldives, and we again saw a major improvement in the relationship. New deals were signed, and both India and Maldives re-established the strategic partnership, and this continued until 2023. So until 2023, India enjoyed very good ties where we restored our influence and rebuilt Indian presence in the country. But from last year, we have seen the threat re-emerge with Mohammed Muizzu leading a presidential campaign. Mohammed Muizzu has been mentored by Yamin Gayoom. Yamin Gayoom is the mentor of Mohammed Muizzu. So Mohammed Muizzu led the presidential election campaign last year, primarily based on anti-India sentiments. He promised to the people of Maldives that if he is elected to power, he would champion the India Out campaign and force India to withdraw the troops and the military equipment. So he built a campaign on nationalistic lines, just like his mentor Yamin Gayoom, and was seen to be inclined towards China and seen to be going against Indian interests. So this campaign by Mohammed Muizzu won him the elections, and he became the president last year. And since then, he has escalated tensions with India. Immediately after coming to power, he ordered India to take back the troops and the military equipment which India had donated. This led to increase in tensions between the two countries. Eventually, India honored a part of the request. We removed the troops. The Indian troops now have been removed, and we have replaced them with civilian personnel to provide technical support to maintain the military equipment donated by India, to service and operate the helicopters and aircrafts and naval vessels donated by India. Civilian personnel have been deployed in the place of Indian military troops. And Maldivian leader Mohammed Muizzu visited China, Turkey, and signed key agreements which was seen to be going against Indian interests. Because generally the practice has been that every Maldivian leader visits India first before going to any other country. If you look at Mohammed Nasheed, Ibrahim Soleh, they all followed India first policy. As soon as they came to power, they would come to India first, signing important agreements with India, protecting Indian interests, and then they would visit other countries. But Mohammed Muizzu deliberately broke away from this convention, visited Turkey, signed important defense agreements, which bothers India because Turkey has been hostile to India of late. Turkey has even sided with Pakistan, and both have been creating challenges for India. Then Mohammed Muizzu visited China a few months ago and signed key agreements that could compromise Indian interests. So this was the phase over the last few months which led to the rise in tensions between India and Maldives. But this was not the end of it. PM Modi visited Lakshadweep Islands and promoted island tourism within India. This led to a backlash in Maldives, where some of the government ministers under Mohammed Muizzu, they unnecessarily targeted India and the Indian Prime Minister on social media. They saw this as an Indian attempt to target the tourism revenue of Maldives, to bring Maldives in line, as India was trying to promote Lakshadweep, which shares the similar scenic beauty of Maldives. India never spoke against Maldives as such. The Prime Minister never promoted Lakshadweep as an alternate destination to Maldives. That was never done. But Maldives saw this as an attack on its tourism industry. So few tourism and other cabinet ministers from the Maldivian government, they tweeted against India. They used very expletive language, abusive language against the Prime Minister as well and against Indians, leading a sort of racial attack against India. This triggered Indian social media users, leading to the hashtag Boycott Maldives campaign. Until then, Indian tourists were the primary source of revenue for Maldives. Indian tourists were the biggest flow of tourists into the country, bringing enormous revenue to the Maldivian government. So as these tensions rose on social media following the Maldives Lakshadweep controversy, Indians called for boycott Maldives, which has led to a significant fall in the tourist flow from India to Maldives. This has hurt the Maldivian economy, and in general, Maldives has a weak economy. Today it is facing a serious crisis, and this forced Maldives to make a U-turn in its policy. Eventually, Mohammed Muizzu and his government realized that Maldives cannot go away from India's influence. It can't move away from India's, depending on India's support. So we saw the course correction happening from May, June itself. Until April, there were heightened tensions in the relationship, but India managed to use the leverage, the influence we had. Given the crisis Maldives was facing, India used the opportunity to convince Maldives to reset the relationship. So as demanded by Maldives, we withdrew the troops. We didn't want to go against the interests of the people of Maldives as well. If Mohammed Muizzu won the election on an India out campaign, it means there was popular support to see the Indian troops to be removed, and India honored the request. However, we convinced Maldives to retain the military equipment which benefits them and replace the military personnel with civilian personnel. Following this, India carried out an outreach. We allowed diplomacy to work. Classic diplomacy was employed, and Maldives realized eventually that it cannot do without India's support. So in June 2024, when there was a change in government in India and when PM Modi was sworn in for the third term, all the neighboring countries were invited for the swearing in ceremony, and Mohammed Muizzu was also invited. So along with then leaders like Sheikh Hasina and the others, Mohammed Muizzu accepted the invite and visited India, which was his first visit to India. But it was not a bilateral visit. It was just part of the swearing in ceremony where India had invited all the South Asian leaders to participate. But this was a sign that India and Maldives were trying to repair the damage in the relationship. Within few months, in August, India's Foreign Minister Dr. Jai Shankar carried out a very important visit to Maldives to repair the damage in the relationship and to reset the relationship. Because Maldives now desperately needed India's support as its economic crisis was escalating. I'll explain what is the crisis Maldives has been dealing with. I'll come to that point. So India showed willingness to help the country because we have always provided that help as the first responder, as pointed out by Prime Minister Modi. So following the visit of Dr. Jai Shankar, SBI, State Bank of India, bought Maldivian government bonds which provided some liquidity relief to the Maldivian economy. We promised further support, and the Foreign Minister invited Mohammed Muizzu to India on a bilateral visit. So within few weeks, Mohammed Muizzu has visited India, and just over the last 2 days, both sides have concluded key agreements which marks a reset in the relationship and a diplomatic U-turn by Mohammed Muizzu. So let's take a look at what agreements have been signed. What is the big achievement during this visit? So Mohammed Muizzu meeting Prime Minister Modi in a bilateral visit is indeed a significant development given the tensions in recent times. Both countries have agreed to start the relationship afresh, to reset the relationship following the tensions, and they have elevated the relationship to comprehensive economic maritime security partnership. It means that economic partnership and maritime security cooperation will be the main planks of this relationship, which is exactly what India wants. Maldives needs India's economic support. It wants financial support from India to overcome the liquidity crisis. It wants Indian tourists to come back to the country to drive its revenue and forex reserves. And India wants maritime security cooperation to protect our strategic interests in the Indian Ocean. So both sides have established a comprehensive economic and maritime security partnership. So as part of this agreement, India has promised complete support in the economic domain. See, the Maldivian economy has been hit ever since the COVID-19 pandemic. The lockdown restrictions and travel restrictions had already affected the flow of tourists into the country, which depleted its forex reserves. Plus, Maldives being a very small economy which is not diversified, it is heavily dependent on foreign debt. It has to borrow from countries like India, China, from international markets as well, in order to survive economically. So over the years, the debt burden has piled up. Today, its external debt to GDP stands at 110%. The foreign debt Maldives owes as a percentage of GDP is at 110%. Its forex reserves has dropped to an alarming $440 million. This is barely enough for Maldives to cover 6 weeks of imports. After that, the country will go bankrupt. It won't be able to settle the trade on its current account, leading to a balance of payments crisis, meaning it won't be able to pay for any further imports. With $440 million in its forex reserves, Maldives knows that it is staring at an economic default. So it desperately requires India's help and assistance. In fact, credit rating agencies like Moody's and Fitch, they have downgraded the Maldivian economy and flagged Maldives as an economy which is at the risk of default, complete default like Sri Lanka. So to avoid this worst case scenario, Maldives needs help from India. This is what pushes Mohammed Muizzu to change his approach towards India, right? And India has capitalized on the opportunity, and during the visit, we have signed an agreement promising $750 million worth of currency swap arrangement. So what's a currency swap? Currency swap is an exchange of currencies between the central banks of two countries, between India's RBI and the Central Bank of Maldives. Through a currency swap arrangement, we basically provide assistance in the form of US dollars and as well as in the form of Indian rupees. It's nothing but a loan. It's a concessional debt, but with very fixed terms. The repayment rate, the exchange rate at which the loan has to be repaid, these parameters, they are fixed in the contract. So once the currency swap is implemented, India's RBI will provide US dollars and Indian rupees to Maldives, which Maldives can use to overcome the crisis, and at an agreed date, at an agreed interest rate and exchange rate, Maldives will pay back in Maldivian currency. So it's a swap of currencies. It's basically a loan in simple terms, but it is more attractive, more reliable than borrowing from the international markets. If Maldives were to borrow from the global markets or other lenders, it would be much more expensive because the parameters won't be fixed. Exchange rate might vary, interest rate might vary, the repayment period could be shorter, right? So that becomes a burden on Maldives. But a currency swap provides for predetermined conditions, a flexible repayment period with fixed exchange rate and interest rates, and this gives a breathing space for a country facing a liquidity crisis. So out of the $750 million which is committed under the currency swap, around 400 million would be provided in the form of US dollars and another 3,000 crores or close to 350 US dollars as Indian rupees. So in total, it would be a currency swap of $750 million, and this is a facility provided under the SAARC currency swap framework. Under the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, which is a regional group of South Asia, there is a currency swap framework where India helps the neighboring countries in the SAARC region to overcome such liquidity crisis. So through this facility, RBI is providing the currency swap that will enable Maldives to tide over this crisis. Apart from this, India is rolling out the RuPay cards in Maldives. RuPay cards will become operational in Maldives, which could immensely benefit the tourists, and it could benefit Maldivians as well, because several Maldivians come to India to study, to work, to get medical treatment. So this would provide for further economic integration in the banking sector. And India is going to roll out even the UPI in Maldives. The Modi government, after successfully establishing UPI and India's digital public infrastructure, we are scaling up the initiative and rolling it out in many other countries, from Nepal to UAE, to Sri Lanka, to Singapore, to France. In multiple countries, UPI has already been rolled out, and Maldives would be the next country. This will facilitate easier cross-border payments. It will enable the tourists, it will enable and benefit the citizens of both the countries and even the traders to settle the transactions in respective national currencies, reduce the dependency on the dollar, reduce the transaction cost, and provide for real-time seamless cross-border payments. So both India and Maldives will benefit from this economic initiative. Then, as part of development assistance that India provides to Maldives, India has been funding a housing project to solve the housing crisis in Maldives. because of the shortage of land, Maldives faces a big housing problem. To help out the Maldivian people who are friendly towards India, India launched a 4,000 unit housing project where multiple apartments with modern facilities are being built with loans from Indian banks. So out of these 4,000 homes being built by India, 700 have been completed and they were inaugurated during Mohammed Muizzu's visit to India. Both the leaders jointly inaugurated and rolled out 700 housing facilities built by India with Indian assistance. Then both leaders inaugurated a strategic airport runway built by India. Please make a note of this for your prelims. The Hani Madhu Airport runway, located in a strategic location in the Indian Ocean, has been built and expanded by India with Indian financial support, constructed by an Indian company. So this airport project, this runway expansion project was inaugurated, and both leaders have taken stock of the Greater Malay Connectivity Project, which was launched back in 2019. Since Maldives is made up of these small atolls, it's very difficult to have inter-island connectivity. Maldivians depend on seaplanes and speedboats to move from one island to another, which is a big restriction, because transportation through sea route and through air route is expensive, time consuming. At least the close by islands can be connected through sea bridges. In fact, China had already built one such bridge, the Sinamale Bridge, under the China-Maldives Friendship Bridge project. So after India rebuilt the close ties with Maldives in 2018, we launched the Greater Malay Connectivity Project with $500 million financial support from India. 400 million as a loan, as a line of credit, a concessional loan, and $100 million as a special grant. Through this mega project, which is being constructed by an Indian company, many important islands present near the capital Malé are being interconnected. So India is building these sea bridges to link Vilingili, Gulifalu, Tilafushi with Hulumale, Hulale and Malé. These islands, which are spread out in the Indian Ocean, will be interconnected with sea bridges and connectivity routes built by India. So both leaders have taken stock of the project. It's been going on from last few years, so they have evaluated the progress and India is hopeful to complete the project as soon as possible. Then Maldivian leader has urged Indians to return to the country to revive tourism. This is clearly a sign of course correction. From targeting Indians and Indian tourists at one point to welcoming Indians and requesting Indians to visit the country, it clearly marks a complete U-turn in the anti-India approach of Mohammed Muizzu and few Maldivian parties and organizations. So Maldives needs Indian tourists. See, of course, there are other countries as well, like China, Russia, even US and European countries, from where Maldives gets a significant tourist inflow. But Indian tourists of late have become the biggest source of revenue, given the proximity of Maldives, the good connectivity that we have, and the various resorts which are present, which are popular in India. Maldives has been a preferred tourist destination amongst Indians. But because of the hashtag Boycott Maldives campaign, there was a significant drop in the flow of Indian tourists. Now Maldives is trying to correct this, it's trying to attract Indian tourists again, and India has promised support to revive tourism and connectivity. And also, both countries have agreed to look at a proposal to trade in their national currencies going forward. This is an attempt to reduce their dependency on the US dollar and global reserve currencies and to settle their bilateral trade by using national currencies. This will reduce their dependency on Western banking and financial systems. It will reduce the dependency on the US dollar, leading to more stable trade relations. Both sides have proposed a free trade agreement. India and Maldives are negotiating, they have agreed to take up the negotiations of a free trade agreement, which could help counter the FTA between China and Maldives. And Maldives has also requested further economic support from India, which is being considered by India. Maldives has requested loan deferment, the repayment of loans to be deferred to a later date, so it gets some breathing space to overcome the crisis. It has requested further credit lines. It wants further line of credit such as concessional loans and economic support and assistance to tide over this crisis, and India has agreed to study these proposals and take them up. So these are the proposed initiatives. Now coming to the last part of the discussion, the most important part of the relationship, defense and security cooperation. For India, Maldives is a critical partner as far as maritime security is concerned in the Indian Ocean. Maldives occupies a critical strategic location. It faces number of threats in its exclusive economic zone. It has hundreds of islands distributed across the Indian Ocean, and it doesn't have sufficient resources to patrol and carry out surveillance in its EEZ. This is where India steps in. For many decades, India has been assisting Maldives in military training. We have trained the Maldivian National Defense Forces and its Coast Guard. We have supplied weapons and military equipment. We conduct several joint exercises. We are involved in some important defense projects to strengthen the capabilities of Maldivian National Defense Forces and its Coast Guard. So both sides have taken a relook at the defense relationship, and India has agreed to service, refit and upgrade a naval vessel which we had gifted few years ago. See, in 2006, India had gifted INS Tilangchang, a naval vessel, to assist the Maldivian Coast Guard to carry out patrolling and surveillance, along with the Dhruv helicopters and the Dornier aircraft for maritime reconnaissance and surveillance. Recently, we had donated INS Tarmugli, which is named as Huravi in the service of Maldivian Coast Guard. This vessel is in need of refits, repairs and servicing. India has agreed to take up the project. This Coast Guard vessel which India had gifted will be brought back to an Indian naval base or a shipbuilding facility where it will undergo the required upgradation and servicing, and we will give it back to Maldives. Apart from this, India has taken up a Coast Guard project, a harbour project. This was announced a couple of years ago when we had friendly ties with Maldives. The Ekta Harbour project being built by India at Uthuru Thila Falu. At this strategic location, India is building a harbour to assist the Maldivian National Defense Forces and its Coast Guard, and potentially this could be used by Indian Navy and Indian Coast Guard as well. Now Mohammed Muizzu has agreed to work with India on the Ekta Harbour project, which has strategic implications for the region. It will enhance the operational reach of the Maldivian forces and as well as the Indian forces if we are given access to it. Then to tackle corruption, both sides have signed an agreement through which India's CBI, the elite anti-corruption agency of India, will train the Anti-Corruption Commission of Maldives. So capacity building and training is also part of our cooperation. So these are some important agreements that have been signed, which marks a turnaround in the relationship. But of course, the China angle is not going away. That is something India will have to learn to deal with. Over the years, especially from 2012, China has really established its position and cemented its influence in Maldives. This remains a challenge for India because before visiting India, several months before that, Mohammed Muizzu visited China and signed key agreements, including a defense pact. Now, this is something that worries India. We have seen Chinese vessels, including the PLA Navy and its so-called research vessels, which are essentially spy vessels to spy on India, to carry out espionage focused on Indian Navy, India's missile launches and satellite launches. Such spy research vessels are frequently entering both Sri Lanka and Maldives, posing a significant threat for Indian interests. In fact, China also has promised economic support with a currency swap arrangement and with further investments under Belt and Road Initiative to help the country overcome the economic crisis. So apart from being a key economic partner, China has become an important defense and strategic partner. So this is the challenge faced by India. For example, recently, earlier this year in February, India, Sri Lanka, Maldives were conducting a trilateral Coast Guard exercise in Maldives. Now, can you find out the name of this trilateral Coast Guard exercise between India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, and mention the name of the exercise in the comments below. Initially, it was a bilateral Coast Guard exercise just between India and Maldives. Few years ago, we brought in the Sri Lankan Coast Guard as well, and every 2 years we conduct this Coast Guard exercise to build maritime cooperation. So when India, Sri Lanka, Maldives were conducting this Coast Guard exercise, on the very same day, a Chinese research vessel, the Xiangyang Hong 03, which you can see here in the image, reached Maldives and docked in Maldives for several days, raising concerns and alarm for India. Because these so-called research vessels of China essentially engage in espionage operations to spy on India. So such threats remain a concern for India. So it clearly shows the India-China competition that goes on in Maldives and across the Indian Ocean. So what do you think about this reset in the relationship? Please let me know in the comments. Do you think Maldives under Mohammed Muizzu is genuinely seeking out a friendship with India, or are they just driven by the economic necessity? And are they just reaching out to India in a transactional manner? Because see, India doesn't have anything against the people of Maldives. Historically, we have enjoyed very good ties with Maldivians. There is a deep-rooted cultural relationship. Many Maldivians, they love India. They depend on India. It's only few anti-India elements like Mohammed Muizzu, Yamin Gayoom, their political parties and a few radical groups as well. There is a party called Adalat Party, the Jamaat, which are often funded by Pakistan and Saudi Arabia as well. So this has led to rise of radicalism. There are many security threats including illegal fishing, drug trafficking, organized crime and radicalism and terrorism. So of course there are many security threats that India has to deal with apart from the competition from China. But do you think Maldives is making a genuine U-turn in its policy, showing genuine concern for Indian interests, or is it purely transactional? Let me know in the comments, and I hope you guys have liked the session. If you did, please press the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.